Extensions with excessive glazing can pose several challenges for homeowners, builders, and architects. One of the primary issues is compliance with building regulations, which sets limits on the amount of glazing you're allowed on your extension. Overglazed extensions can lead to problems such as overheating in summer, increased energy consumption in winter, and difficulties achieving the required U values for the thermal elements. Hi, I'm Lewis Dixon. I'm a qualified on-construction domestic energy assessor. Me and my team at Energy Smart have helped numerous homeowners gain compliance with their overglazed extensions. Some of the problems we've helped people with include getting your overglazed extension approved before you started the work at the design stage, just so you know you're good to go. When your building control officer throws a spanner in the work during a construction, we can still help with gaining compliance. When your builder has basically up and building control won't sign off your project. When someone tells you at the end of your project what you should have done and you haven't, we can still help. So here's what we'll cover in today's video. We'll look at the rules regarding the permitted amount of glazing you're allowed on an extension, the required thermal values for an extension, common mistakes people come across with overglazed extensions, and finally, and most importantly, we'll look at the solutions to all of these problems. Here are the glazing rules around extensions. When you build an extension, the building regulations state that the total area of windows, roof lights, and doors should not exceed the following: 25% of the floor area, plus the total area of any windows and doors which are no longer exist or are no longer exposed due to the extension. So let's have a look at a simple example. You have an extension measuring 5 meters by 4 meters. This equals 20 meters squared. The extension now covers the part of the house that originally had a door, a 2 meter squared door and a 1.5 meter squared window. So the maximum glazing you're allowed, 25% of the floor area. So that's 25% of 20, which equals 5 meters squared, plus the total area of the windows and doors which no longer exist or are exposed due to the extension. This gives us 2 meters for the door and 1.5 meters for the window, which totals 3.5 meters. So our total glazing allowance in this example is 5 meters plus the 3.5 meters, which equals 8.5 meters. Now, with modern extensions having bifold doors and roof lanterns, the glazing threshold is easily exceeded. Now I'll cover thermal elements and building regulations compliance. Along with the extension having to comply with the maximum glazing amounts, the thermal elements, that is the walls, floors, roofs, windows and doors, must meet the minimum U value requirements. The efficiency is measured in what's called U values. The U value is the rate at which heat is lost through a thermal element and is measured in watts per meter squared. The lower the U value, the more efficient this thermal element will be. Part L of the builder regulations state what the minimum U values for each element should be. I've explained that under Part L of the building regulation, the glazing opening should be no more than the permitted amount, and the specific thermal values need to be met for each thermal element. So now, what you find happens in the real world is one of these rules or both of these rules are not met. So now we'll look at the 4 most common problems we have. The number one problem we have is this can either be at design stage or the extension has already been completed, is you've gone over the permitted amount of glazing. Problem 2, certain thermal elements don't meet the required U values. This can either be the floors, the walls, roofs, windows, or doors. Problem 3, an existing conservatory has now been opened up to the main house, and now this is considered an extension. Problem 4, the main heating system of the house has been extended into the conservatory, creating excess heat loss due to the amount of glazing in the conservatory. The resulting outcome of all of these problems is that the heat losses and carbon emissions of the extension is in excess of what they should be compared to a notional extension. A notional extension is a theoretical model used in building regulations to compare the energy performance and compliance of an actual extension against standardized assumptions for heat loss and carbon emissions. If you have any of the previous problems we've mentioned, we can still help you achieve compliance. We'll now look at solutions to the most common overglazing problems. The same solutions apply if the thermal elements don't comply. Luckily, the building regulations offer two options to demonstrate compliance in a different way. These are either using the area weighted U-value calculation or SAP calculations. So now let's look at the area weighted U-value calculation method. This is where the heat losses of the actual or proposed extension is compared to a notional extension. To recap, a notional extension is an extension that's the same size and shape as your extension, but where all the elements comply with the building regulations. This is then compared to your actual extension. If the heat losses from your actual extension is no higher than the notional dwelling, then this extension passes. The area weighted U value of each element is calculated by multiplying the U value of the element by its area. So, for example, if we have a cavity wall which has a U value of 0.18 and the area of this element is 10 meters squared, then the heat losses through that area will be 1.8 watts. All the elements of the extension, that is the walls, roof, floor, windows and doors, are calculated, totaled, and then compared to the notional extension. The area weighted U value is somewhat limited, but if the extension hasn't been built yet, there is possibility that some of the thermal elements can be upgraded to compensate for excess heat losses from the glazing. However, sometimes this is still not enough to be no worse than the notional extension. The second alternative is by using SAP calculations and the whole house method. SAP calculations are assessments used to evaluate the energy performance of buildings, ensuring compliance with the building regulations by calculating predicted energy use and heat losses. SAP calculations can only be carried out by qualified assessors using approved government software. The whole house method is an approach that evaluates the energy performance of both the existing house and the proposed extension as a single unit. This method considers all elements of the building, including walls, roofs, floors, glazing and doors, in order to calculate the total heat losses and energy use. By treating the house and extension together, it allows for greater flexibility. The assessor then models two dwellings in the software, which are then compared. One dwelling is a theoretical dwelling called a notional dwelling. The notional dwelling is the current house as it is and the extension where all elements conform to the building regs. This is then compared to the actual dwelling, which is the current house as it is, along with the actual extension as it is or is proposed to be built. The two models are then compared. For compliance to be achieved, the actual dwelling must be no higher than the notional dwelling on three metrics produced by the SAP calculation, which are the dwelling emission rate, DER for short, the dwelling fabric energy efficiency, or DFEE, DFEE, the dwelling primary energy rate, or the DPER. If the extension was built before June 2022, then it is assessed under the old building regulations and only the dwelling emission rates, DER, are compared. The benefit of SAP calculations is that many more factors can be taken into account. For example, potential improvements can be done to the main house or the extension. Solar gain can be taken into account. So for example, if an overglazed extension is southerly facing, you're going to benefit from all that solar gain. So what this would do is lower the heat demand because of the solar gain, and this will have a positive effect on your SAP calculations. This is because the extension will have lower heat losses over a year than the extension with the permitted amount of glazing, and therefore it increases your chance of passing. SAP calculations will produce the relevant reports demonstrating this. Another example could be if the actual dwelling is failing on the dwelling fabric efficiency. This means that some fabric part of either the extension or the house would need improving. The fabric elements that could be improved is either the walls, roof, windows, or floors. So here is the beauty of the SAP calculation. In our pretend scenario, if the extension has already been built, it may be easier to increase the loft insulation of the main house to achieve the desired results. This could be the most practical and cost-effective way of achieving compliance. As money doesn't grow on trees, we'll always look at the most cost-effective solution for you. In fact, our expertise and experience could get over 90% to pass without the homeowner having to do any additional work.
Hooray!
I'm going to wrap this up now, but if you need SAP calculations for an overglazed extension or any other extension compliance problems, we're here to help. So get in touch today. If you need help with your overglazed extension or SAP calculations, click the link in the description below.